I want to welcome you to this workshop. I am one of the organizers. Thank you for coming. I thank the chiefs, our area chiefs, and our DA for coming. I always appreciate your participation. So thank you for coming. This is our second event of this kind of thing. We did one in 2021 after the killing of George Floyd. And this time, because of what happened in Memphis, Tennessee, we decided to do a second one just to bring us together to ask questions and learn about things about law enforcement. So this kind of thing is important. It's something that we need to do because, you know, we're all together, whether you are law enforcement or you are citizens, you know, we need to work together. As you know, law enforcement personnel are coming from our homes. They are our brothers, they are our sisters, our uncles, and all that. We meet in the church, we meet in school, so we're all together. So we need to work together. But you know, law enforcement people are also supposed to, they are meant to serve and protect society and respect people the same way citizens are supposed to respect them as well. So we all need to work together to avoid problems, you know. We are lucky that in this area, we haven't had such a horrible events like the one that happened in Memphis or George Floyd. And we are grateful that we have law enforcement professionals who are very mindful of citizens and mindful of a job. We shouldn't take it for granted because all it takes is just a second and it will happen, right? So we need to be mindful and we need to appreciate our people, our law enforcement, our citizens, and we all need to work together in order to avoid those kind of incidents. So I want to welcome you and thank you for coming. And this event is going to be streamed live, so people will be hopefully joining us, and afterward, it's going to be shown on our channel 19. So again, I want to welcome you and thank you for coming. At this point, I'm going to invite Dr. Ibe to talk about the rationale for the workshop. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Let me say once again, welcome to this event. About 2 years ago, we met in this place after the incident of George Floyd. Unfortunately, after that incident, about 229 Black people have been killed by the police. Just from 2 years ago to now. The incident in Memphis, Tennessee brought us together again to take stock and know what is going on. First, we thought it was white police officers killing Black people. This time, it is Black police officers killing an unarmed Black man. The police was created to serve and protect. But when this goes beyond the principles of policing, it becomes penitent that we as a community can sit down and have a discussion on what we do and what we don't do. And, that is the reason why we are here, to discuss the current events and to know the way forward. Once again, I say welcome.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to introduce our Master of Ceremony, MC, which is going to be Mr. Kenneth Singleton. Mr. Singleton is serves as the Associate Vice President and at Albany Tech, Associate Vice President for Academics and Emergency Management. Before that, he was the chair of the Department of Criminal Justice for many years. Prior to that, before he joined Albany Tech, he worked at APD for 22 years, where he retired. before he joined Albany Tech. He has been at Albany Tech for 16 years now. So if we add 16 plus 22, I don't know how old you are, but, you know. But I have known him for a long time. Before he joined Albany Tech, you know, he served in different capacities at APD. He was a police precinct commander. He was community-oriented policing commander, and he was a community relations officer. I knew him. I came to know him when he was. I came to know him when he was the community relations officer. That's been a long time. So he has served in different capacities, both at police department and also at Albany Tech. And he's a graduate of Albany State, let me say that, for a record, right? So please join me in welcoming Mr. Singleton as our MC for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Ochie, and it's a pleasure for me to be back out here at Albany State. This is a great event that, like Dr. Ochie stated, this is our second year doing this, but it's a community event, and I think that we all need to get together to try to combat some of the concerns that we may be having in our communities. So without further ado, I want to introduce the panel. Starting first here to my right, we have Chief Anita Allen from Albany State University. Next to her, she has Captain Eddie Jones from the Albany Police Department. And then we have our DA, Mr. Greg Edwards. And then we have the Chief of Police from Albany Technical College, Ms. LaShawnda Etheridge. Welcome. Well, let's start off with this first question, and it's open to all panelists. What is the biggest issue facing law enforcement today? What is the biggest issue facing law enforcement today?
Perhaps one of the biggest issues that's facing law enforcement, particularly city municipalities, is the number of personnel that we have. We have a dwindling workforce. It's hard to recruit. It's hard to retain. So right now, the biggest thing is getting enough people in to do the job. The crime rate is going up, and the number of personnel responding to the crime is going down. So from us, from the city police department, it'll be the number of personnel that we have out here.
Well, I'm going to agree with Captain Jones. We're experiencing the same thing, shortage as far as getting the right people to fill these positions, because we have to be very careful when we are looking at individuals to come into police department. First, you have to have a passion to do this job. You have to have a passion and really a love for it, for the people and for your community that you're going to serve. So we all are struggling across the state of Georgia trying to get personnel to fill these positions to be able to serve our communities, to serve our college campuses. And it's also in North Georgia, you see a lot of, it's a wage war where people are going back and forth, are trying to be very competitive with salaries. So that's another issue that a lot of law enforcement are facing right now as results in trying to get the right personnel to serve.
I'd have to agree with what has been said so far. The biggest problem facing law enforcement is lack of personnel and the lack of growth in personnel. And that extends even into the area of prosecution with my efforts to bring in lawyers. And that is something that is true with all the prosecution officers in the state. And I was just commensurating with the Attorney General today about the notion that, again, there are not many new lawyers coming into what is essentially government service with regard to law enforcement, and in particular, like prosecution, and also just government service in general, which would include public defenders and legal services attorneys. But I guess some of the reasons for that loss in personnel are similar to what we have directly in law enforcement, but there's just some different issues. But one of the issues is, in fact, competing with the civil attorneys in that market in terms of recruiting personnel. And the other thing is that the pandemic illustrated that it's easier to do certain legal work. A lot of the civil work, which includes real estate contracts and a lot of other non-courtroom activity, you can do a lot of it from home. And a lot of people are looking at the quality of life type aspect of work. And I can imagine that for law enforcement, with all of the things that are going on with that, we were laughing a little bit earlier about the notion that no matter what law enforcement would do, they might get sued. And so I saw recently that a lot of people who were already veteran law enforcement officers, you get up every morning and you might go to work and you might get killed or you might get indicted. And that's something that people are not wanting to just deal with if you don't have to. So personnel or lack of personnel is the biggest problem facing law enforcement. And it does take a special calling to be a law enforcement officer. As a person looking from the outside in at law enforcement officers, it takes a special calling to be a law enforcement officer or a teacher. And both of those groups are the most important sets of personnel in our society. But they have the most difficult jobs, and people are trading, better personal lifestyles as opposed to, I guess, maybe following what may be a calling. So it's a tough issue, and that's the toughest issue I see for law enforcement.
So I'm going to agree with what they've said. It's definitely the issue of not being able to find officers, as well as the salary. But I'll also say with things like what has happened in Memphis, it's the perception and what the community thinks of police officers as well. Because some people do think that one bad apple may spoil all the apples, but of course, all police are not bad. But that's something that you have to think about as well.
Between the community and law enforcement or the criminal justice system, what is you all's philosophy on community-oriented policing, COP?
Well, everybody knows Chief Allen loved the kids. So you have to, again, I go back to what I said earlier, you have to have a passion for this job. And I tell people all the time, if you don't have a passion for serving in law enforcement, you need to find something else to do. We can tell people all day long how much we care, but if we don't show it, it means nothing. That is something as simple as getting out, having a conversation, talking with individuals, speaking. A lot of times just by feeding and buying popcorn and pizza, we need to have courageous conversations. We need to go and talk to individuals and find out what is the root of the problem. Because a lot of times, if you see right now, we're dealing with a lot of mental health across the nation. What is it that we can do to provide resources and get more involved in our communities? And not just with the communities, we do that here in our campus community. It is very important that you want to get engaged with your community. What is that and what does it look like? Every community is different. You have to find ways to engage and be supportive. It's more than just in this room. What are we going to do outside of this room? Just like I call it the old-time religion, we're in church all the time, but get out the four walls. Go out and meet the people, talk to the people, walk the street, knock on doors, talk to the grandparents that are still living and taking care of the little ones. We got to get out more. We have to do more. And the more that we do and they see it and that we care, I think we can change the community at least a little bit better than what it is. Because right now it's a bad reputation. And she said it's the perception. The perception is not color. It's blue, black and blue right now. We don't trust the police. Because if they come out to serve, if I have a mental health problem, I'm going to jail. If grandma calls and says, I need you to come talk to my son, they're going to jail. So why? They don't call anymore. We just talked about the no snitch rule. Nobody wants to talk to the police because the perception is they can't trust us. One or two things are going to happen. Either we may die or we may get beat. So that's something that we have to change in our communities.
Community policing, community-oriented policing has been around for a long time. This is my 30th year here with the Albany Police Department. and it has been a part of my career since I've been here. And just like Chief said, it is a full circle kind of service. We do a lot of the neighborhood watch meetings. We attend those. We attend civic organizations. We are committed to doing as much as we can within the community, because we know, just like she just got through saying, that the more visible we are on the positive side, it helps us out and helps the community out in the long run. I can remember when I was a school resource officer back in the early 80s or the mid 80s, being involved with those kids every day, and those kids now are 30, 35 years old. And we still have camaraderie with those same old people now that they're adults, and now their kids are coming up. So when they see police, they had a positive interaction when they were young, and now that they're adults, that positive interaction is still going on. So I do think that being proactive and being visible in the community is the way to go. Like I said, we've done a lot of things under Chief personally. We've started the CSO program, which is a community safety officer program, and under that program we have non-sworn personnel that goes out in the community and do a variety of things that helps law enforcement because they interact with the community. We also started a program where we do have a clinician that goes out when we do recognize that there's a person that is having a mental issue or a mental episode. So we try to get a clinician out with them out front as quick as possible. That way it can minimize the relationship between the police having it maximizes us having a positive interaction with the individual before anything negative happens. So we're trying to be as proactive as possible. It takes everybody. It's not just the police department's responsibility, it's the community responsibility. So the more active that they helps us, and the more active we are helps us as well. So community-oriented policing is the way to go, and I think that is a positive thing. Another thing that we try to do as much as possible is try to hire people from the like community, from this area, because they have buy-in, they're familiar with the community. That helps a lot. I think traditionally law enforcement, a lot of police officers kind of police in the same area which they grew up in, that they're already familiar with. That helps a lot, and we try to do that as much as possible. So we can get more buy-in that way as well. So we're trying to do our best. We want as much feedback as possible so we can continue doing that.
So I agree with both of them said. For me, the main thing is about building relationships and making sure that you meet the needs of the people, but you kind of meet them where they are. For instance, like what Chief Allen said, you have to go out and kind of get on their level. Like I remember we were in another meeting and we were talking about getting out in the community, but not going in your suit, but going in your regular everyday clothes. That way people can see you as them. Because basically the only difference between us and a lot of people are the decisions that we've made. You could easily be on the other side. So I just think it's real important to build the relationships and try to meet the need. Of course, we're police officers, we make arrests, but you have to take it a step further to try to help see people succeed and see what has put them in the situation that they're in and how you can help.
I can only make an observation from looking at community-oriented policing, and my observation would be that it's a good thing, of course, to have community engagement, to encourage them to support police, and to serve as jurors and help in making the decisions about persons who are involved in the criminal justice system. So the more community policing, the more engagement, the better overall, because in addition to supporting police, a lot of citizens will be better citizens and will participate in the criminal justice system as jurors and other things that will make our community better.
Thank you for the opportunity to let me to meet the officers and police. I heard that you have the challenge is recruit the police officer. Now in the country like Asia, in Hong Kong, and they have a school called police school, and then they train those students become a future police officer, and they train them physically, psychologically, and also with all the knowledge. And I didn't see, I don't know, I didn't know that there's a police school around this area. And maybe, I think if we can work with Dr. Ochie to create a program. For example, in our ASU, we have the ROTC, and we produce those students for Army. And so maybe we can have a joint program that will produce a good future police officers for you. This is just a little thought. Thank you.
Can I comment on that? So, yeah, you're absolutely right. We've had some conversations, Dr. Ochie, with Dr. Armstrong as it relates to that. Our nearest post training centers, Tifton, Georgia, Forsyth. We have one in Columbus. And the goal is here at Albany State University, we would like to have that, to have some type of program where our students can go through that with Dr. Armstrong, and then they can get those credit hours when it comes down to going to the police academy. When they graduate, they'll already have that, and they'll have an opportunity to be able to be employed. And so that we're producing our own police officers. So that means we get first dibs when they graduate, and they can come work for us. And if not us, of course, you know, Albany Police Department, and then we'll share some with Albany Tech. However, we'll have the first dibs. But we have talked about that. And I think Dr. Armstrong is looking at that, and we are very supportive of that, whatever we can do to get that started. So thank you for that comment.
Here at Albany State University, as a student, I was a part of a cadet program, and the cadet program where we came over, several of us came over to work with the police department, working on a grant that Albany State had. The relationship that I made with the chief at that point in time, and the relationship I made with the police department, when I graduated in June, and I was at the police academy in July. So that fostered a good relationship, and you're absolutely right. If you can do that early, get them involved early, it can pay big dividends down the road. So that's correct.
Numerous years of policing and criminal justice experience. I think when you all started policing, traditional policing was totally different. There were certain types of calls that you went on. But nowadays, I think you alluded to it just a few minutes ago, on the types of calls that you go to. So what we have going on in our society, the types of things that you all have to deal with as police officers, what type of training are you giving your people to be able to assess situations, to handle different types of situations that they may come across?
And what I do is, as the district attorney, is that we have a grand jury. The grand jury consists of citizens that make decisions about cases and how they progress in the criminal justice system. But one of the things that they also do is make recommendations that should be followed by our elected officials and appointed department heads. And one of the things that has been a consistent recommendation from local grand juries has been that people realize that our officers have a very high-stress job, and that there should be specialized training for any officer or correctional officer before they get into to their work. And so those are constant recommendations that citizens observe, and they recognize that a lot of the bad encounters are because sometimes it's just a lack of training or lack of familiarity when someone might be having a drug or mental health episode. So they have constantly recommended that we engage in giving specialized training to officers for that purpose, before they hit the street. And on top of that, for the personal well-being of officers, for their mental health, that they be given sufficient time and resources for their continuing, dealing with stress. So it's a thing that the citizens recognize, and I'm sure that all of our law enforcement executives are probably going to make some comments on it. So again, that's a thing that's going to be very important. So I'll now let you all go from there.
So you're absolutely right. So before you even become a police officer, we know that you have to go through some specialized training anyway. But after that, it's a requirement with post. There's 20 hours a year that we know that our police officers have to do it. And if you're an executive in a chief role, we know it's 25 hours, so a year. But we do more than that. One of the things I can say here that I've experienced just now in higher ed, there are more of mental health calls. So now we really have to have our staff to be trained in what? Learning how to deal with students with mental health. CIT training, of course, we have. I just came back from a mental health summit that was very good that the University of Georgia put on, the University System of Georgia put on. That was very good, where some of our students even attended this summit. These are some of the things that we have to deal with, because how do we de-escalate? How do we talk to these students in crisis? Narcan, I see Dr. Phillips in here. We're getting ready to do another training on that. So these are some of the things just for the university right now. And I know it's a little bit different in municipality, but they still do the same thing. But I think that's a focus point for us. How do we deal with our students and continue to do the training to make sure that we are providing the necessary resources to them verbally, what to say and what not to say to our students while they are in crisis mode, because that can cause more trauma. Those are one of the things I know that we're doing. CIT, all law enforcement agencies are doing that across the board. I know now they have communications CPR training to make sure communications officers are knowing how to respond to those that are calling in. Again, it goes back, even policy review. We was just talking about accreditation up here. Continue to do policy review, making sure that the officers are up to speed with their policy and current legislative changes. New House bills that are coming about. Those are still trainings that we still need to make sure our officers are doing.
So training is a huge piece of any law enforcement. That's the only way that you can stay ahead or even stay even with the current trends. Just like Chief said, our officers now are having to be certified in a variety of different things. The specialized training from trauma to stop bleeding training, the CIT training. We have a variety of different training opportunities. So when a person comes to us, a lot of times they are young adults, 20, 21, 22, 23-year-olds, and they may not have driven a car real fast legally, may not have shoot a gun legally. So we do a pre-academy where we take them out, get them acclimated with the weapons, acclimated with the shooting, go over a few laws and rules and regulations, trying to get them prepared for the academy. Once they come out of the academy, you will be assigned to an FTO officer. That FTO officer will ride with you, or you will ride with that FTO for 3 months, and then at that point you'll have another opportunity to assess again. But the training doesn't stop there. The training is ongoing, just like she said, the 20-hour training, that's mandatory, but you have all kind of training. Right now, the biggest thing is the body-worn camera. That is a big training tool for us. The officers wear them, and the supervisors have to review a lot of the calls that they go on. We use those as training aids, as well as social media. You could see a lot of different things on YouTube or a variety of other sites, and we utilize those for training purposes as well. A lot of it is graphic, but that's what the officers have to see. And so we try to incorporate as much things as we possibly can, social media, as well as the hands-on training, the specialized training, and then the yearly training that we have to have every year. So the training goes on and on. That's the only way you can stay ahead of anything.
So one of my takes on training is every incident that may make the news or cause some kind of controversy brings about another type of training. So we're always doing a whole lot of training. But one of the biggest things is mental health, like they said, as far as mental health with the students, but also mental health with officers and making sure that they take care of themselves, manage their stress well, all of those type of things.
Here's a question from one of our criminal justice students from Albany State. How do you handle bystanders trying to intervene in an escalated situation?
We're all trained to really try to pay attention to whatever you're doing at the time. The bystanders, if they're out of the perimeter area, normally, if there's a critical incident, we have the area roped off or taped off. As long as they stand on the opposite side of that and they don't interfere with the crime scene, then them looking, them standing, them Videoing, it doesn't really affect us. We try to train our officers. They're people too, so we try to train them as well, just give them a skill set to focus on what the reason why you're there, focus on the call, the victim that's down there, or the suspect that you have in custody, and try to get out of the scene as soon as possible. So that is a difficult thing as we continue to move forward. I think most officers are getting used to and getting comfortable with the fact that we tell them all the time. They have to know that every time that there's somebody's recording you everywhere. So if you work that way, thinking that you're always being recorded, then it won't bother you. You won't pay attention to them. You'll pay attention to your job and the things that you're trying to do.
I was going to say the same thing. For me, you should always act if somebody's recording you. And that is even better because now you got more recording. As long as you're doing your job and you're being professional, they have a right to do so. It is okay. And like you say, we're human, and sometimes, but they have the right to do so. So as long as you're being professional, do your job, do what you have to do, take care of the incident or the circumstances that is going on, and just move on. Because sometimes that same video that someone is recording can be a testimony for you and can probably be a witness as well. So
I got to stop going last because I think of something else to say. The same thing they said.
It may not seem like that, but it has decreased. Certainly, when I've joined the DA's office back in 1990, Albany was the per capita murder capital of America. We were averaging about a homicide every 2 weeks. And for a town of our population, or city of our population, that was just overwhelming. And when I first joined the DA's office, I was part of working to prosecute those numerous murders, most of which were domestic matters. But one of the things that happened, which I think helped reduce some of the issues, was the police department, sheriff's department, county police, they all developed policies where some of those domestic violence situations were diffused, and the courts were more, attentive to making sure that special conditions and bonds and everything were in place to make sure that, people would not bounce right out and go back into situations that were volatile and resulted in homicide. So we're far afield from being the per capita homicide capital of America that we were once. So, yes, homicides have decreased.
Do you think your budget plays a major role on your daily operations when it comes to policing or the criminal justice system?
I can go first this time. Absolutely. Yes, your budget is important because you're expected to do so many things, play so many roles, continue to be community oriented and reach out to the community. But you have to have the resources and the funds to be able to make those things happen. So budget is important.
Budget is definitely an aspect, particularly when you start talking about equipment and technology, because as we continue to deal with the decline in personnel, the need for technology has grown exponentially. So we have to have a budget that is comparable to that, so we can keep up with the technology as well as keep up with the surrounding agencies, because it is a wage war. If you go to Atlanta, they jump from city to city within weeks and months at a time. So the budget does play a part of it. We are thankful for the citizens and the councilmen of Albany, because we do pretty good for the city of Albany. But it is a constant challenge, because we have to keep up with the technology race, from getting drones, like we talked about earlier, more drones, more technology, more cameras, more footage, storage space. So it just continuously goes on and on. So the budget is a big deal because you have to pay for all that. So that's correct.
everything they said. Again, that's a huge resource, the budget. And nobody likes to talk about the budget, the big B word, the budget. And we talk about technology. We talk about what resources we need. But think about the morale that you need for the people that are serving the community. Being able to build an organizational chart where people can grow, where we have the funding to be able to send people to training. That's a resource. That's part of the budget. Again, technology is changing as we sit here now. We need so many different things to keep up with what those that are sitting at home and thinking about crime and what they're trying to do. We have to keep up. So the budget and resources is what help us to be able to fight the crime. Cars, lights, it goes down to uniforms and boots, pens, pencils, body cameras, even new weapons, weapon holders. You got to think about all this stuff. He talked about storage space. People don't think about that. Do we need storage space? Absolutely. So there's so many things that involves a budget. But when I think about budget too, Albany State does pretty well because we're trying to compete with, the police department. I think we are toe-to-toe, neck-to-neck. And I'm so proud of that. However, those are some of the things that we fight for when it comes down to our budget, just to make sure that we also are able to provide to the officers that serve the community where they can at least, be able to serve their families as well. So we don't think about that a lot of times, but that budget is key.
Here's another question from one of our Albany State students. What are good personality traits to becoming a great police officer? What do you all look at when you're?
Well, first of all, just like the chief said earlier, you have to have a certain personality, and you have to be able to be flexible. The things that we look for in the personality is you have to be well-rounded. We want people who are not afraid to step out and talk, to meet people, greet people, help people. Because a lot of times, it's hard to train a person who's standoffish, someone who's self-centered. It's kind of hard to train those people to be police officers because you have to do so many things, and it is a multifaceted career or field. So we want people who are diverse and well-rounded.
I agree with everything he just said, especially on a college campus. You have, again, I go back to passion. You got to have a passion for this job. We are looking for someone that is absolutely well-rounded, who will be able to get out and engage with our students, have a conversation, be able to be open-minded to create activities, events, or programs to engage with our students, finding ways that we can be a better police department, and not afraid to do this job. That is one of the things that I'm seeing in interviews. Some people, when you ask certain questions and when they pause and they don't know how to respond, sometimes they're afraid because this job is real, y'all. Every day we wake up and it can be something different. So we got to make sure the individuals that are coming into this role or want to be a part of a police department, you have to self-evaluate. Is this something that I really want to do? Because you never know what you're going to encounter day to day. You never know. So you have to have passion, and you just got to be a people person, and you want to be an agent for change. I think those are two key things that you have to be to serve a community.
Along with that, I think you have to have good work ethic. You have to be willing to go above and beyond. You have a lot of people, am I going to get paid for that? Am I going to get paid for that? You have to be willing to do the work.
I just thought about a couple other things I'd like to add. We have to have leaders. Because what she's saying is important. You have to be a leader. You have to be a problem solver, and you have to be a forward thinker. It's because, like we said earlier, technology is driving the field now. So we need people who are technologically savvy because they got to push it forward. They got to be able to solve problems, but you got to be a leader too. So the good work ethic is definitely key. That's hard to find. It's getting harder and harder to find, actually. So that is definitely at the top of the list as well. So we need forward thinkers. We need leaders. We had a chief that was a chief here a long time ago, and that was one of the things that he did, which was Chief Jack Lumpkin. He said he only hired leaders. And it made a lot of sense. And as the time went on, and I've followed his career in other places, that kind of has been a thing that he's done everywhere he went. So I think that we try to do the same thing here. We try to find those people who are leaders first, the people who are good teammates, good team leaders, and we try to get those on the police department because that's what we need out here on the streets.
And I just say amen to all of the things these law enforcement executives have said about the best police officers. From my observation, the best and most effective police officers have all of the characteristics that they just described. So, looking in and depending on what work that law enforcement officers produce, again, those are the best officers.
College towns oftentimes pose a challenge for police and law enforcement. What challenges are you having in Albany with the college town?
Nobody wants to go this time, huh?
I'll start this one off.
Okay.
One of the things, of course, that I have observed as the district attorney and as an alumni of Albany State, one of the things is that a lot of young people come and they don't have good information about the law. They've been living by urban myths and things like that. And at one point I was doing a program that I used to call Knucklehead 101. And that is, just some fundamental things that would keep you from getting in trouble as a student at Albany State. And you see some of the common things that that students do that are kind of based on, like I said, their misunderstanding of the law. And of course, ignorance of the law is never an excuse, as they always say. So one of the things that I see is that a lot of people do not understand the concept of, a lot of students do not understand the concept of being a party to the crime. In other words, they may, do something, they may give somebody a hookup at their job, or they may drive a car involved in some type of activity. And in their minds, they don't believe that they have done anything, but they are actually probably facilitating the crime or certainly aiding and abetting in the crime. And that's one concept that a lot of students don't grasp. Another concept they don't grasp sometimes is what will happen to them if they engage in criminal conduct. From a lot of students come from states where you have to be at least 18 years of age or older to be held responsible as an adult in the criminal justice system. Of course, in Georgia, if you're over 16, you're going to be held responsible for your criminal acts. Now, actually, there's pending legislation actually right now. I don't know with the legislature right now that is discussing the issue of raising the age of juvenile delinquency in Georgia to 18. But a lot of students come to Albany State, from states where it's already 18, and so they don't understand that what they may do might affect their adult records. So there are a number of things that are challenges and a lot of misunderstandings about the law. So the thing to help college students and what I encourage is that we do more things to illustrate how not to get in trouble, to defeat the urban myths and things that they come up with when they arrive here at Albany State.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. We really appreciate it. That was very good. I want to say to any of my students that are online, I love my Rams. We have some awesome students here at Albany State University. And you just said it, and I was writing it down. A lot of times they misunderstand And I think that's the key. And we just have to continue to educate our students so that they do understand. And we have to remind them that the choices that they make, it comes with consequences. So they have to be mindful on the choices that they make. A lot of times, the hype is fun, the music is popping, right? Hair flying, makeup popping, they feeling good, dressed up, ready to go. But they have to remember, they have to make smart choices. So all of my Rams that are listening to me today, you got to make smart choices, because I don't want you all to see Greg, even though he loves you all too. But I want to make sure you're making smart choices so that you don't make a decision that can cost you your freedom in your education. So just remember that.
To piggyback on all that, I agree with both. But also there is another component of this, which is underestimating what they're doing. If they are committing these felony acts and they're in college 2 years, 3 years, about to graduate, we've had several students, and I'm not picking on Albany State because I went to Albany State myself, but we've had several students get to their senior year in college and maybe participate in a fraudulent activity, whether it's bad checks, whether it's scamming, whatever it is, and then they end up going to jail, and now they're 21, 22 years old. They have a college degree or about to have a college degree, but they have a felony on their record, and which is going to prevent them from doing the things they're trying to do post-college. So I think they underestimate, either they're underestimating the police department here because they're coming from somewhere else, or they're underestimating the type of crimes that they're actually involved in. We try our best to try to educate as much as possible. We team up with Albany State and at Albany Tech as much as possible. If we can come over and talk to classes, we try to do that as well. We try to head it off at the beginning, try to give them as much information as possible. But at the same time, they are adults, they're young adults. They have to understand and have to know that whatever they do will follow them into their adulthood life or later on in their adulthood life. So that is a significant problem. And we try our best to do whatever we can. We don't target Albany State students. Particularly if I'm around, because I'm a Ram as well. We don't target those students, but a lot of things that she just got through saying is exactly true. The loud cars, the fast cars, all the flash, all the attention, it draws you to them on purpose. So we have to do better. And of course, the elephant in the room is marijuana. That's the elephant in the room. Marijuana smoke everywhere. I know they're coming from different places where the laws may be a little lax, or they may come from another place where it's not observed the same way. But it's still an illegal activity. It's illegal in the state of Georgia currently, and it is a prosecutable offense. So we have to make sure that they understand that part of it. And you just can't just do what you want to do because you want to do it, because it is against the law. And unfortunately, whenever our paths cross on that, then the student normally end up catching the short end of the stick. So hopefully we can continue to educate. They have to understand that it is not legal in the state of Georgia. Please understand that part. Marijuana is not legal in the state of Georgia.
What are some of the strategies, or what are some of the things that I can get involved in here on campus that's going to enhance my opportunities here to stay within the law?
And I can say the police department, we're engaged with our students. We're always trying to create whether they come or not, we try to create some type of program or activity to stay involved with the students. As far as like mediations, a lot of people don't know that we do mediations with our students. We have students that one of the things that we haven't talked about, getting their emotions in check. And Dr. Phillips, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes they get on this hype thing, and, when you try to talk to them, they don't want to listen to nobody. They know everything. And we try to, and I know me personally, sit down and have a conversation, especially when you have two that are beefing. Put them in a room, let's talk it out instead of trying to duke it out. And then that's when you educate them, and I bring up the same thing that Captain Jones just said. You're going to remember this stuff 5 and 10 years later if you get caught up in the system, and when it's time for you to get that job and you're in the top 3, the first thing they're going to do is what? A background check. And check your social media, and they're going to call back to Albany State for your student code of conduct. So where do you think you're going from there? So we have to put that in their mind to help them understand. Now, once you start talking like that to our students, everything changes. So that's the new teaching, the new education that we're giving our students. You know, the other stuff that we used to do back in the day, you got to switch it up. You have to talk the way we were just talking now. You got to make them think about the choices that they're making. It comes with consequences. It might not be today, but it's going to be a few years from now. So those are some of the things that we're doing. It's a little minded. Like, we're going to have a sip and paint that's coming up. We got Chief Chucks and Pearls. That's our second event. We do an annual Women Empowerment Gala. And we do a lot of women empowerment. Why? Because we want our young ladies to be young ladies. And we try to put these things out there, but at the same time, they have to make a choice to want to be a part of these programs. And not only with us, we have Greek Life. There's always programs. You know, Mr. Mormon is doing programs all the time. We have individuals in our department, Captain Covington, Brandon Willis are going out doing programs at our police station. We have a training room that Lieutenant Fry put together now that we can have some events where the students may come and they may have talking sessions, you know, where they're talking to our male students, or we may be talking to our female students, or we just may be talking to students in general. Even when we have to make an arrest, there have been times where the officers have a mediation or a mentor moment with the student so that they can understand that we still care. Because I always say we are a resource to our students, not only a police department, but we are a resource as well.
I want to add something to that. What are you doing for faculty and staff?
So what we do is, the last time, the thing we had was last year, we had an active shooter training. We had Corporal Rachel, and that was virtual because we were still kind of in the COVID thing. So that was one of the things that he put out, and he did with our faculty and staff. Some other things that we just implemented was Stop the Bleed. We just recently had that with Lieutenant Fry, and some of you all here in Albany State, you may have seen those flyers. We've had some now training that is open to faculty and staff if they choose to come. If you look at some of the emails that are coming out, that is coming from our training department, Lieutenant Fry, we are putting out some training that is open to staff if they want to come out and do the training. But Stop the Bleed was one of the ones that we just had, and I thought it was a great training with the feedback that I heard from Lieutenant Fry. So we're starting more training. But that's one of the things, an initiative that we've done from the beginning of this year. We're also doing things like fire drills that you guys don't hear about, but that's with residential life. But of course, our RAs, they're considered what? Staff. Today they did a fire drill with the Early Learning Center, but that's also with our staff and our little babies. So those things are not announced, but these are things that we are doing on the campus as well.
Also, in the law enforcement side of it, we all train together. The police department trained with Albany State, trained with Doherty County Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, as well as Albany Tech. We do tabletop exercises in the event that something happens. We also conduct tabletop exercises with MCLB in the event that something happens on the base. We recently did one out at the airport in the event that something happens at the airport. So we are constantly trying to train and constantly trying to build that camaraderie between the agencies, and then hopefully bring in more of the personnel as well. So we try to train as much as possible and try to get everybody active in the community. So we do train together as well.
All right. My next question. Do you think that this community is doing all it can do to support law enforcement and or the criminal justice system?
Well, I think this is a perfect segue into what I think was the focus of this workshop, and that is what happened in Memphis. And what does it really mean? What does it mean when you have officers that are doing the things that they were doing, and how does it affect the public perception of officers? That's a good segue into us discussing which is a pretty tough issue. And so I'll start with the notion that there were several officers, and these officers were all African American, and the victim was an African American, and that's different from the usual dynamic that we've been seeing with some of the other instances of bad police and citizen encounters, particularly with African Americans. So what does that mean? Does that mean that officers everywhere, it's different to be a police officer? Does that give you some sort of absolute authority that goes beyond being of any race? I have been talking to a person who had been an attorney in an African country, and talked to another person who had been a special contractor in Afghanistan, and they both described to me how police in these countries were corrupt. And so the implication may be that because, you know, being a police officer with the power inherent in being a police officer may be a part of corruption. And so that's the question that I think the Memphis situation posed for us. Are police corrupted by the power and authority that they have, such that they would do things that, you know, they might think they can get away with? I don't think so. I don't think that we have reached that point. I think it's a lightning strike, but it is something that I have addressed in addressing cases and juries. I put that into my repertoire of questions. When we begin a jury selection, we go through a process that's known as voir dire, where we ask potential jurors their feelings about certain situations. So in the last trial that I was involved in, post-Memphis, I did ask the question, has anyone felt that the matter, and I reference specifically Memphis, that has made you as an individual reflect differently on evaluating the testimony of a police officer? Does this matter make you feel that you have a greater duty to scrutinize what police officers are doing as they go about their daily work? Do you believe a testimony of a police officer only if it's backed up by video? So these are some questions that I asked the juries, or potential jurors, and I did not get any answers in the negative when I did it. So I can only conclude that, and sometimes people won't answer questions in a public forum like in the jury process, but just to get that thought process out there, I did ask those questions. And the fundamental thing that I was trying to accomplish was to make sure that, you know, that did not reflect negatively on that particular case that I was doing, where primarily most of the witnesses were going to be police officers. So that is a question that I'm asking, and I think that the notion is that we do have to ask that of our community. I think this community has a good set of police officers that have not, you know, America has not reached the level of say, direct corruption, like the examples that I was talking about, where, you know, police officers would have roadblocks and you'd have to pay to go past them. Stuff like that. That level of corruption, or the corruption where someone is just getting beat up just because they don't, you know, like that person's, you know, appearance or politics. We aren't there yet. And I don't think we'll ever get there because, again, one of the things is that, as has been already noted, we are watching everybody's a potential witness with a recording device. So you just can't get away with doing anything without expecting to be seen. So those things are important indicators to me, or at least the discussion I had, important indicators to me that, you know, each community will evaluate its officers, its community, and will make the best decision based on what it has observed. And again, it relates again to all the things we've already talked about in terms of community policing. If you know your police officers, if you interact with your police officers, and vice versa, officers know the community, then I think we should be able to move forward without the specter of that type of thing, such as Memphis, happening. I think Memphis was a lightning strike, and it's not something that, you know, is indicative of all police officers. You know, people unfortunately would take, well, that's just, just an example of what all officers are. And I asked that question, do you think Memphis reflects on what all officers are across this nation and in this community? And like I said, I didn't get an affirmative answer from them. So at this point, I think that our community is moving forward. And I think that, again, if these law enforcement officers here continue to engage, then I think we should have a positive forward progress with this type of situation.
All right. Do you think that there's enough public education about police and police functions and the criminal justice system as a whole?
Let me start off on this one too. What I found is that our average citizens, I don't know if they're teaching civics in the public schools anymore. Fundamental civics. A lot of people, basic civics, the three branches of government, who's your governor, who are your senators, who's your state representative. But a lot of folks probably don't know who those people are. And these are important issues. And, the whole process of participating in government and a democracy. We need to educate our citizens better on basic civics. Yes, we do need to do that. And yes, we need to do that.
I would also like to add that this is not just a police department issue. I think a lot of time when people see things happening in the community, they look at the police department. We're scrutinized, obviously so, and we accept that because this is a job that we do. But this is not just the police department's fight. This is everybody's fight. This is the whole community. And a lot of times the police departments are the first one called out on the floor or called out on the carpet because we're out there up front. But we also need our community partners to step up as well. So I do think that the education piece is very important for people to know what the laws are, what the rules are. Is also, if you're going to hold us accountable, hold your neighbors accountable, hold your employees accountable, hold your employer accountable. So the accountability piece should be also spread out for everybody. So as we continue to grow and we continue to do our best, we want the same thing from the community.
I agree with everything you all said. However, again, with the education piece, I think for even in higher ed, I think for our students, social skills, how to interact with police is very important too. I think that's something that we really need to talk to them on how to do that. That's very important because I think sometimes when they have those interactions with law enforcement officers, not necessarily on campus, but off campus, some are just afraid. They don't know what to do, how to react, what to say. And one thing can lead to another, and that doesn't necessarily mean that student is guilty. So we need to just talk to them on how to interact with police personnel as well. I think that's an important thing. And also some of the social skills as well.
Earlier, you talked about hiring issues and challenges. Do you think that you offer enough incentives to attract young people to police work with the criminal justice system?
I think that goes back to the budget that we talked about earlier. I think that in law enforcement, you do have to be creative. We've seen other communities or other municipalities, they offer bonuses to like signing bonuses like the athletes do. We've seen relocation bonuses. We've seen new cars when they as soon as they come out of the academy. So yeah, it is a wage war that goes back to the budget again, and absolutely we have to continuously to upgrade our packages so we can attract people. We have to look at a variety of other things. Maybe down the road we might start looking at some tax breaks, looking at some housing, looking at child care issues. So we are having to incorporate a lot of different things to accommodate the new employee that's coming in now because their demands are a lot higher and their expectations are a lot higher. So we have to continuously tweak that. So yeah, it is a challenge.
Well, when I talked about the budget earlier, I got the B man in the room right now, so I'm not going to look to my left because he's sitting here. But again, going back to that, we did talk about the budget. However, a lot of new police officers that are graduating from the academy are looking for bells and whistles too. They like the shiny things. One thing I can say about higher ed and the USG system of Georgia, we offer TRS, which is one of the best retirements that you can have. And that's one of the things that we try to utilize and attract people to come want to be a police officer in higher ed. We have 26 institutions. And so we're all trying to fight that battle, try to get people in and be a part of it. But again, it goes back, to your budget. I think that Albany State University, again, like I said before, we are competing with Albany Police Department, and I think we're doing very well. And I'm very proud of that. But again, they look for these bells and whistles and lights and cars, and they want all these gadgets. So those are some of the things that attracts these new police officers. But again, we want to attract officers that have a passion for the job. I'm going to keep repeating that. You have to have a passion for this job. And they can look for bells and whistles, and they can look for all the money they want. But if you don't have a passion for policing and serving your community and being an agent for change, you might want to find something else to do.
The George Floyd situation and what happened in Memphis. If that were to happen in Albany, Georgia, how do you think our community would react?
That is a tough question, and the reason why it's a tough question is it's not by accident that that those incidents are not happening in the same frequency it is across the country. I think all the agencies in Albany, we try our best to hire the best candidates possible, but we also have a close-knit community where we try to police that as well. I think we've all have had employees that came to our agencies that didn't quite fit. We thought they did. They didn't quite fit. We weed those people out. We hold them accountable. We've had several officers who've been arrested because they've done something incorrect. So I think that we try our best. In reference to the George Floyd incident and the incident in Memphis, those things are training issues. Those are supervision issues. And it's personnel issues. And I think that we try our best to make sure that those things don't happen. We stop it as soon as possible. The body-worn camera is very significant right now because it gives us an opportunity to see exactly what the officer saw and also gives an opportunity to critique them along the way. These things don't happen in a vacuum. These things are systemic in the agencies a lot of times. So we hold ourselves accountable at the top. We hold our officers accountable who's coming in, and we hold the ones in the middle management to the same esteem. So only thing I can say is it's not an accident that it's not happening. I think we all work well. You can't say that it won't ever happen, but I do know that in the event that something happens like that, then we are prepared to hold them accountable, and we will make sure that they are prosecuted if they are out here doing criminal activity while wearing the badge at the same time.
We have had some officer-involved use of force that have resulted in deaths, and the processes that we follow are specific in terms of dealing with those issues. They are reviewed by grand juries. We bring in outside investigative agencies to begin with for any officer-involved use of force, particularly ones that involve, a fatality. And we have the grand jury composed of citizens review the evidence, and the citizens make the decision based on the evidence as to whether the person will be charged, the officer will be charged, and or what the charges will be. So we follow those protocols, and as already noted, we prosecuted officers for doing things which violate their oath of office. We prosecute any law enforcement officers for engaging in acts of corruption. I have such cases pending now. And so no one is above the law, and that's the principle we follow, and we go where the evidence leads us.
I want to piggyback off of that, what you just said. No one is above the law, but I am proud to say here in Albany, Georgia, the Albany Police Department, Dougherty County Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, our school police, we all work hand in hand together. I think we have a great working relationship. I think we all collectively hold our officers accountable. We make sure that the proper training and education is important into our police officers. Again, excuse me, Albany Tech as well. She comes from Albany State, but we all, seriously, we all work together. That was unfortunate with that incident with George Floyd in Memphis, but we can't say it won't happen, just like Captain said, but I do feel strongly with the relationship that we have as a community. We work so hard to prevent things such as that happening. That's why we train together. That's why we have meetings. That's why we have these conversations behind closed doors. What can we do to be able to have our officers? What kind of resources? We're constantly doing things that you guys don't see, and I appreciate the fact that we have a good working relationship with our city police and our county sheriff and our county chief. That makes a difference. And again, like you said, it's not by accident that we are operating the way that we do. And I think our citizens, I think if you ask some of the individuals here in Albany, they will say some great things about the police officers here in Albany, Georgia, and in our county. I think we all do a good job, and we don't hear it enough. So I'm just telling the individuals on this panel, we do a good job, and let's keep up the good work and keep up the partnership and continue to network. And I appreciate you as well, Greg, for the support. And when we have to hold people accountable, and then the support when we have questions and how we need to go about handling some of the challenges that we have that we're dealing in law enforcement. So I do appreciate the fact that we all work so hard together to keep our community safe.
Also, we have a real proactive complaint process. If anyone has been mistreated by law enforcement, by the Albany Police Department specifically, you can always call 229-431-2100, which is the front desk for the Albany Police Department. You can voice your complaint that way. You can come down to the police department and fill out a complaint if you have a complaint on the officer. You can also do it online. You can go to your app store. We have a new app. We recently launched a APD app. So you can go to that as well as download that. There's a ton of information on there, and also ways that you can report a complaint on an officer. Those complaints are followed up on. It is forwarded to our IA section, which is our internal investigation side. If it's something that is going to be criminal in nature, we do get the district attorney involved. If it has to be outsourced to the GBI or a third party, we do that as well. So we try to head it off as quick as possible. If there is a complaint and someone is doing something wrong, we try to catch it on the body-worn camera. If we don't catch it, then a citizen complain. We will follow up on it, and we will get back with you the feedback. You will get a feedback as to whatever the outcome of your complaint is. So that's a very important piece as well. So we encourage, if you see officers doing something wrong, even if they're doing something good as well. I don't want to just make the wrong, but you see them doing something good or something bad. If you want to, fill out a complaint, you can do so. Please utilize the APD app. It's brand new. We've had it less than a year now, so please download that, and you can report the information that you see.
I do agree. I agree that with all the work that everyone has done within the community, that if we did have an incident like that, I don't think that the community would see it as all police officers are corrupt. I think they would see it as the isolated incident that it would be, because the officers in Albany do a good job, and they go above and beyond to show that we are the community.
This is what we're doing today is a part of one of the things that we do, being proactive in the community, seeing us engage and interacting with the community. Like I said, we go to the schools, we go to churches, we go to any function that we possibly can. And I think that is a big piece of it, because they get a chance to see that we are not out here just out here trying to violate people's constitutional rights. We are trying to help. We are trying to get ask questions. We're trying to get the feedback and the follow up. So I think when incidents happen, because we've had incidents where we've had an officer who had to utilize his weapon in the line of duty and discharge his weapon, and the community didn't. It was no outrage in that as well. So I think that's because we do such a great job on the front end, which making sure that they know that we're not out here just doing that. We're trying to do our best, and we're trying to do the best we can, and we try to stay active and proactive, and that kind of helps us out. So the more we do on the front end, it helps us out on the back end.
What's your relationship with the business sector?
My current assignment, I'm over property crimes with the criminal investigation portion of the Albany Police Department. And one of the things that we try to do is we try to hold meetings with the business sector. Let them, we bring them all in. We actually have meetings quarterly at the police department, and we try to talk to them, get any feedback they may have, encourage them to have camera systems. We also send our community safety officers out to do safety checks on them. Also look around the building, look around the business to see where their blind spots could be, and try to give them information on their security systems. We try to send officers by most of the businesses to see whether or not anything that we can do to help them. If there are any complaints, like as I stated, it is funneled down through whatever supervisor is responsible for that, and they get the feedback from that. So we try to do as best we can to interact with the business sector, which is separate from the community sometimes, because we know and understand that they have specific needs. We've had meetings with the nightclub owners here in Albany, the entertainment districts, and try to get them in a room together and try to talk to them because they have specific needs as well. So we try to do our best to meet with all businesses. Anybody that has any questions or anybody have any concerns, we try to address those accordingly.
That was more of a municipality question. Good answer.
Anybody else want to respond on anything else before we close out? Any questions from the audience? Okay.
I moved here 27 years ago, and I feel very safe here. I appreciate all the police officer, law enforcement's effort. I talked to my neighbor. They also appreciate your efforts because we all realize that because your efforts make our life more peaceful. And I have a technical question. Because I feel I'm safe because most of the time I stay in a safe area, especially on campus. But a few years ago, they passed the law that allowed guns on campus. Okay, and so as a faculty member, I need your advice. How do I take good advantage of this? For example, should I get a gun? Should I? Because right now everybody, students or anybody can walk in on a campus and with a gun. And so I need your advice. How do I take a good advantage of this law? Thank you.
Well, let me attempt to, I think, address that question. Georgia became what's known as a constitutional carry case. That means state. That means that anyone who does not have a legal impediment, such as being underage or being a convicted felon, can carry a firearm. In any places, there are some prohibited areas, however, that you are not allowed to carry a firearm. And I've got to get used to, this change has been fairly recent. And at one point, you had to have a carry license to do many of the things that, in terms of carrying a firearm beyond your own home, motor vehicle, place of business. But as a constitutional carry state, again, if you have no legal impediment against, you're carrying a firearm, then you can pretty much carry a firearm in many places that a private property owner can forbid even anyone from coming onto their property with a firearm. So that's still the law. Also, the Albany State University is still what is called within a school safety zone. In the early 90s, or around the time that they had the massacres, the school massacres in Colorado, many states enacted school safety zone laws, and Georgia, in fact, enacted such a law. And those laws actually are really addressed against students carrying firearms on campus. Now, they've created some gray areas now with the change in the constitutional carry law. They're kind of gray, and we got to figure them out because, again, as you just noted beforehand, certain students, and in that instance, you had to be a person who was over 21, and you had to have a carry license, and you could carry your firearm on campus concealed, but there were still some restricted areas, even with your carry license, that you could not have your firearm on in certain areas on the campus. So we're in a gray area now. We're going to have to see how things are going to play out because we're just now beginning with this constitutional carry concept. But as a general proposition, we still are in what's called a school safety zone state. And that means that there's a 1,000-foot perimeter around every public and private school that is to be considered part of that school safety zone, and you cannot carry your firearm, particularly if you're a student, in areas, and that would be violative of the law. So with the new change in the law, I would sum it up like this. Again, there's a lot of freedom for persons now without a license to carry a firearm, but there are still restricted places. Those restricted places include not being able to carry a firearm into a governmental building. You can't carry any into airports or anything that's covered by federal law. Federal law trumps state law, period. So if there's some laws that, if you're trying to get a firearm through, TSA, you're going to have problems. So, federal law trumps state law. You also have, mental health facilities. You cannot come into a jail facility. There's a guard line, as it's called, that's around every jail, and you can't cross into that area with the firearm. So there are many other, and within 150 feet of voting areas, those places are still forbidden. But there are a lot of other nuances. What I would suggest is that anybody interested in finding out about the law engage in a program that I conduct along with the Albany Police Department. It is a firearms class that we conduct. We've been doing it, we had been doing it at least quarterly before the pandemic. We did one this past about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And what we do is we go over all of the laws relating to firearms carry, because there are a lot of aspects about firearms, including civil liability. If you shoot somebody, you may have, in addition to criminal liability, you might get sued. And we talk about all of those issues. We go over 3 things. We go over the laws generally regarding carrying firearms. We go over actual practical safety and the best practices about how you carry your firearm. And thirdly, the firearms training officers will take the persons and they will actually go out and shoot. So it's a three-pronged program, and so I would invite you to get involved with that. So you call the Albany Police Department and find out when we're going to have the next session. It's absolutely free to the public. But like I said, the main change with the law is that now we're a constitutional carry state. So there's still some forbidden areas, and students still cannot carry firearms as students everywhere. You can't have them in dorm rooms and things like that. So the law had already been in place to directly address students carrying guns or weapons, including guns and any other weapon for that matter, because of the things that happened with some of those school massacres. And they are still in place. Those things are still in place, notwithstanding now that we have this constitutional carry law in place as well. So come to the gun class, and just remember, like I said, the school safety zone laws are still in effect. There's still some gray areas that would need to be worked out, because a lot of times when legislators make laws, sometimes they don't know, they can't expect all of the collateral issues that will happen once they enact the law. You know, they didn't think about this, or they didn't think about that. And sometimes we have to work it out in the real world about, you know, how the law as they've enacted it will apply. And we're kind of at that point with some aspects of the constitutional carry, but some things are still pretty clear. And one of the things that's pretty clear is that the school safety zone means that students, for instance, should not have guns on campus.
I just want to tell them also, you can go on the website and look at House Bill 280, and that's one of the things he's talking about, and some of those restrictions that he's talking about. Still, the collegiate games, football games, basketball games, you know, you're not allowed. Tailgating, you are. So that's what he means by some restrictions, and some are not. Any classroom, if they're planning on, if anyone is planning on carrying, they have to go through the registrations office and to make sure there's no move over ready dual enrollment student. See, these are things that you have to know. So I encourage you to go on the website and read House Bill 280, and it'll talk about those restrictions as well when it relates to higher ed in the schools.
Right. Anyway, you all have earned A+. So let's give them a good hand of a hand. What a wonderful panel. We appreciate your comment. Thank you so much. Chief Allen, you were supposed to do a remark, but for some reason you were skipped. So please, can you do a closing remarks, please? Put you on the spot, right?
Well, again, I just want to thank everyone that is on the panel, thank everyone online, and thank everyone that is present here on this evening. I think today was a start just to another new beginning of how we can engage with our communities, our partnership. I think today we had an awesome conversation and dialogue about some of the things that are taking place and some of the things now that we can brainstorm about how we can move forward in the future. To all of my students that are online, I hope you all learned something from this today and you can take away something from this today. And if you have any questions or concerns later on, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will be able to get your questions and follow up with Greg or with Captain Jones or with Chief Etheridge at Albany Tech. So again, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for taking the time to come out so that we can have this conversation. And I look forward to an even brighter future and us continuing to work together and just make our campus safe and our community safe. So thank you.
I think we are dismissed. Thank you so much.